Hello everyone, and welcome to my Platinum Games Extravaganza. During this period, we'll be reviewing every single Platinum game leading up to Bayonetta 3's eventual release. I'll be diving into the history of each game, as well as reviewing the product at hand. With that all being said, before we get started with the very first Platinum game being Madworld for the Nintendo Wii, a little bit of backstory on how Platinum was developed and how the company came around. Platinum Games was founded by none other than the director of Resident Evil 4 Shinji Mikami and the brains behind Devil May Cry Hideki Kamiya coming together to make a new company focusing on creating fun, unique, and a blast to play intellectual properties for a plethora of consoles and for everyone to enjoy. After being partnered with Sega, Platinum Games was thrusted into overdrive, working on a bunch of new IPs on a variety of consoles to get their name and brand out there into the mainstream. Madworld was headed by Shigenori Nishikawa, who had a stake in games like Resident Evil 4 and even Beautiful Joe as game designer, so he knows a thing or two about what he's doing in the industry. With that all being said, however, how is our first forte into the Platinum Games mythos? Let's find out. Madworld is a very interesting game to lay eyes upon. It's very bleak and gory, and the art style feels like it's directly ripped from a grindhouse or noir style film. The game gives off heavy Sin City vibes, and that's always a plus in my book. I love when games try to create something new and interesting for the players to experience, but enough talk. How about the story? The story takes place in Varigan City, a city where the power struggles of men are real. The rich live in high-end castles while the poor are left to fend for scraps on the street. Thankfully, or unfortunately depending on who you ask, a terrorist organization pulls into the island and completely takes over by dropping a virus throughout the city and forcing inhabitants into a gruesome death game. These terrorists also have their own groups of people sent throughout the city to handle any stragglers, all in an effort to compete for this strange yet bloody game called Death Watch. Enter Jack, our main protagonist, someone who decides to sign up for this Death Watch program in an effort to get to the bottom of what's going on in this once somewhat normal city. The game setup allows for a lot of blood to be spilled, and the story offers a healthy dose of twists and turns throughout, albeit maybe not the best or worst twists and turns. It's up to you to decide. I was genuinely surprised by how strong the narrative was, and I feel like anyone looking to pick up the game should be shocked just like me, so don't expect any spoilers here. However, the gameplay on the other hand, it's very hit or miss. Madworld's gameplay functions as a gory beat-em-up. You spend your time going from room to room, clearing enemies in the most gruesome way possible to rack up a surplus of points. The more disturbing the kill, the more points you gain. So what techniques can you perform to gain extra points? Well, we have ramming a street sign into opponents' necks, slamming barrels over thugs' bodies, throwing baddies into spikes, impaling thugs on meat hooks, cutting down the competition with a chainsaw. The list goes on and on and on. Combining some of these techniques will give you a multiplier on your points, and the gameplay loop is pretty addicting in all honesty. The Wii motion controls don't get in the way too often. It's a very simple system for anyone to get the hang of. The A button throws out your generic punches, holding A lets you grab items and opponents, and holding the B button lets the chainsaw rip. Everything is all well and good for the most part, simple controls, a decent combo loop, but the main issue comes into play when we start examining the presentation. The game starts out with promising level design, and the bosses are extremely fun to take on. The levels gave this sense of progression as you travel through city streets, into subways, and onto high ceilings and rooftops. But just as things start to get good, everything begins to fall apart. Towards the middle of the game, or rather the end of the second world, the game's repetitive nature and boring level design rears its ugly head. What once was addictive gameplay becomes a utter slog and a chore. The levels lose that sense of progression and turn into small compact rooms with the same exact killing contraptions with no change. Couple this with repetitive gameplay, a poor uptight camera, ear-gratingly bad commentary, and the drab art style leads it to a rather dull beat-em-up.
There's something very impractical about a game with
Sure, the kills and gore are cool at first, but eventually it gets extremely old and repetitive, swinging my Wii remote around just to watch some guy get stabbed on a spike over and over again like I haven't seen it for the 40th billionth time in this game. Yeah, the jokes can be funny, but not when they're repeated literally every 5 seconds, and sometimes cutting each other off and stumbling over each other just to get their quick quips out as you keep pummeling and doing the same exact commands you did previously during the same exact joke you heard previously. And the level design loses all its luster due to it becoming compact rooms rather than that sense of progression that was experienced in earlier worlds. A couple levels try to shake the gameplay up, yes, boss battles at the end of the world also try to do things to shake things up, but they just drag on a bit too long, especially the motorcycle sections towards the end of the game. Another issue is how frustratingly long the levels last. Many levels last up to 20 to 30 minutes per stage. That's 20 minutes of waggling the Wii Remote up and down, doing the same thing over and over again with no sense of progression, new enemy types, just the same exact thing you did previously, with maybe the occasional mini boss thrown in like halfway through the game or sometimes as a final boss. It just depends. What I'm trying to say is it's repetitive and it's dull and it makes me upset. On top of that, the final boss for each world is rather on the easy side unless the camera kind of gets in the way and messes you over, and as the slog starts to really set in and hit your sides, you realize, dang, this game was only 3 hours but it felt like 10. Phew, I'm sorry. Okay, so what's the final verdict? Painfully average, as I've said a lot of times, but it's the unfortunate truth. The game is just really mediocre, and it's a shame. It has a lot of potential, but it's held back by two major things: the generic control scheme and the console it's on, along with a rushed feel. Yeah, it's cool to see the combos, grabbing people and throwing them against walls, but I would have liked a combo system in the game, maybe a light and heavy attack feature rather than just a jab and grab button. I know it's the Wii Remote, but there's a little bit more we could have done with the control scheme here. Maybe let us toggle on and off the chainsaw so we could use regular punches as like a heavy punch and a light punch, that kind of thing. I don't know, I'm just naming stuff at this point, but anything to just give the game a little bit of spice and flavor would have been great, or at least make some creative combos or add a skill tree. I'm going off. I know this seems like a lot. It's a Wii game, and that's, again, the major drawback. There's just so much potential if it was on another console. I'm just thinking about how it would play on an Xbox 360 or PS3 during that generation. So many unique mechanics, and of course the levels would be much more open-ended, but unfortunately it's confined by the disappointing hardware that is the Nintendo Wii, which is rather, well, not in its favor. It's just a game that needed a lot more polish and maybe cut down on the level times and make them shorter, you know what I mean, and more concise, and then make those levels more plentiful rather than a bunch of long levels that go on for way too long with a bunch of boring and drab level design. That's just my overall thoughts of the game and a little bit of how we could have improved it, but there's still a lot of good here. I mean, for the most part, the story is actually pretty entertaining up until the very end. That's basically the whole game. It's entertaining up until the middle/end, depending on how you feel. And on top of all of that, it's just a rather entertaining experience. It's a cool game. It's got a lot of good stuff going for it. It just could use a bit more work. And the music's pretty nice, but hey, it's a platinum game. The music's always going to be top tier. It's a platinum game. Alright, thank you guys for coming out to my very first Platinum Games review for the Platinum Games Extravaganza. How many times did I say that? Jeez Louise. If you guys liked this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I hope to see you guys next time. Peace.